Greetings, everyone. What you're seeing right now is going to be hopefully a very short video, and maybe our YouTube channel homepage, video. And what this is a really fast and condensed version of the other 5 videos that we just uploaded, and video 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 that were uploaded at the end of January, beginning of February 2018. And that's from a 300-page PowerPoint presentation, and that presentation is an abbreviated version of our big presentation, which is 600 pages, which is, I guess it's more geared now to the media than anyone else, because we've put a lot of references in there. We've been talking with some immigration writers for some national newspapers, and we filled that with references and links, so that a writer, when they get ready to do their story or start working on the story again, they have references to everything. So the topic here is the illegal crackdown on fiancé visa and the resulting, huge risk to national security. We view this risk to national security as being just as significant, or maybe even a bigger risk than the risk of a nuclear attack from the crazies in North Korea, because we don't really think that's going to happen. That would be suicide. Those people know that. They might try to give us some trouble, but I think really the next time they start launching missiles, I think the U.S. military is just going to take care of that situation. It's hard for the U.S. military to take care of this situation because we're talking about domestic terrorism here. So this topic, which you see in both the large and small presentation and also in the 5 videos that we just uploaded, is the part of the basis of this stuff is on the C-SPAN video, where the U.S. Senate Committee on Immigration held a meeting on fiancé visa fraud. So this, shows a few senators here. We have Grassley and Feinstein and Durbin, and then this is the leadership team of the Department of Homeland Security / USCIS and the Department of State / US Consulates. So this is the second panel. If you want to see the first panel, it's in one of the other 5 videos, probably video number 1. So this leadership team, they are Donald Neufeld, David Donahue, David Renaud, Matthew Emmerich, and Greg Navarro. Now the guy on the right, Navarro, is an ICE guy, an ICE guy, not a nice guy. He might be a nice guy, but he's also, a director level person with ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. So his people are the handcuff wearing, gun wearing people that go around and clean up after all these other guys mess up. This is the INA Act. This is INA is the Immigration and Nationality Act. And this is section 104A, and I just want to remind people in here, the A says that the consular officer has the final say in the granting or refusal, or the way most people say it, the approval or denial of fiancé visa cases. So this is the way the law is written. But the Secretary of State, who delegated this duty to the Deputy Secretary of State, is in charge of all the policies and procedures. So what this says is, the Secretary of State shall be charged with the administration and enforcement of the provisions of the Act and all other immigration and nationality laws relating to the powers, duties, and functions of diplomatic and consular officers. So they set the policies that the consular officer uses to assess the case in an interview. So a little bit about immigration officers and consular officers. They both start out in the USCIS and the Department of State as GS5 or GS7, which if you look at this chart here, the federal job grades, GS3 and 4 are basically part-time college interns that look for summer jobs in senators' offices. GS5 to 7 is entry-level positions. So in a large corporation, they might be, a filing clerk or a mailroom person or something like that. These are pretty low-level positions, and they can go up to a level GS9, which is, in the middle of the next layer. It goes from GS8 to GS12. And you're still talking about a low-level supervisor. So, a mailroom supervisor, that's about the level of these people that are making the denial and approval decisions. So we're going to talk here about the statistics of the fiancé visa process, and the government calls this something magic to give the illusion that it's something bigger than statistics, but it's not. They call it the whole of government approach. Okay, so it's not, when you apply for a fiancé visa, it's like the gods of the government all working on this approach, but it's basically statistics. So they have a whole of government approach which uses the whole of government indicator system, which is a statistical analysis of information contained on or derived from the I-129F fiancé visa application. So here's some of the magic that goes on that they lead you to believe. There's this all-powerful, godlike thing with the government that is involved in deciding a case. But some of the statistics here are like this is page 1 of a 6-page I-129F form, and this one actually expired in 6/30/2016. I don't know why I have this one up here. It's kind of old, but I've seen the new ones, and I grabbed this one by mistake. It's basically the same. They look the same. The first page does anyway. So on here you have the applicant, the US Citizen Petitioner, their home address, their country of birth. So these might be some indicators, these magic indicators, because if you were born in Syria and you're over here in the United States now and you're applying for a fiancé visa, that might be a little bit alarming. That might be an indicator. Date of birth is something that we use as an example of an indicator because it's one of those things that you have the date of birth of the US Citizen Petitioner and you have the date of birth of the fiancé, and from that you can derive the difference in age, which is also an indicator. And we use that because it's a pretty easy thing to use as an example. So here we have a significant event that happened in the United States. This is the San Bernardino terrorist attack in San Bernardino, California, where 14 Americans were killed. So what we have here is a radicalized US citizen petitioner. The birth date of this guy is 6/14/87. You can see that enlarged on the right side of the screen. And his, lovely fiancee, Tashfeen Malik, who was born 7/13/1986. So that's 336 days apart. Now, this seems, pretty close birth dates. So you think this is an accident? No, it's not an accident, because this U.S. citizen petitioner, who is a radicalized, wannabe jihadist and, famous for killing Americans, he decides that, he's going to kill Americans and he wants a fiancé to hold another gun. So 2 people holding automatic weapons can kill twice as many people as 1. So he goes up to a www.findaradicalizedjihadistbride.com site and, goes through the profiles and finds somebody that's almost his age and thinks, since he's got the, brains of a 12-year-old, a 12-year-old could outsmart the system. He decides that if he's doing something here that's kind of risky. He's bringing somebody over to kill Americans, so he doesn't want to get caught. So since he doesn't want to get caught, he doesn't want any indicators. And it's really easy to avoid indicators. The bad guys avoid indicators. The good people don't. So here's his I-129F form, and that barcode on there I looked up is their case number, and found that they were approved on March 14th, 2014. So they had a pretty easy and fast process. The USCIS approved them pretty quickly, and then sent it to the visa processing center, and she went in for an interview. I forget where she went to an interview but it wasn't in Pakistan. It was some other country. I think it was somebody, the Arabian Peninsula, like Saudi Arabia or United Emirates or something like that. She came in through another country. So, the incompetent Department of Homeland Security and the equally incompetent Department of State uses an indicator system that can't possibly identify terrorists. Because why? Because they've got the brains of a 12-year-old, and any 12-year-old could bypass this system and get into the United States. So if you take a look at any case here, all cases, all fiance visa cases have four possible outcomes. So you have couples who are in, legitimate couples and criminals. So number one here is a legitimate couple in a loving relationship, and they have their fiance visa approved, which is good. That happens 95% of the time. Number two, couples who are criminal and fraudulent or terrorists, they apply for a fiance visa and they get denied. That almost never happens. Because why? Because criminals know how to bypass the system, and we'll see plenty of examples of this. Couples who are criminal, fraudulent, and get approved, which is bad, which happens very frequently. The terrorists are 1-0. The last year of human trafficking, 400 people beat the system and came into the country and are now in, some kind of human trafficking circumstance where they can't get out of it. Then we have couples who are in legitimate loving relationships and they get denied. And, there's a reason for this, because, the fiance visa process can't be automatic. It can't be that everybody who applies gets granted a visa. That just can't happen. And the reason it can't happen is because we would be overrun by terrorists and criminals if that was the case. So the government has to deny some people. They can't identify the target groups. So who gets denied? It's the legitimate couples, which is unfortunate, but it's kind of, it is kind of a matter of national security. They get denied, they're sacrificed, I guess, because they don't want to give the illusion that A, they're not doing anything, and B, that, terrorists think it's automatic. It's an automatic process, and it's not. So we're going to take a look here. We looked at the statistics in the first part, which is the I-129F form, and fields derived from it and other information derived from it. This is the psychology. So we have statistics and psychology, and this is the basis of this whole process, is these two fields of study. So we did an audit of denials here. And these are couples that go into a consulate somewhere in the world. And I'm not going to read through these. I ask you to pause the screens and read these for yourself. I'll read the first one. My fiance's K-1 visa was denied. The CO gave the reason the relationship is not bona fide. This is kind of like a catch-all denial. If they can't figure out what to deny you for, they just say, you haven't proven that your relationship is bona fide. Here's a couple that's been in a relationship for 5 years. And the CO, the entry level, not very well trained, person decides this is not a bona fide relationship. So, and the bottom here is, the second paragraph is even crazier. It says, the consulate, the CO didn't even look through our evidence. They were convinced that there was no picture of his mom and I. So this is the fiance talking, and all the evidence that they had, or all the pictures that they did look at, there were no pictures of the US Citizen Petitioners' mom and the fiance. That's why they were denied. So if that sounds a little crazy to you, it sounds crazy to psychologists too. So here's another one. You can just, pause this video and read this stuff. It's pretty amusing. And here's another one. Very upset. She's pregnant. Boy. I hate to be in that situation. Your fiance is now pregnant. There's an urgency to get her here. Case denied. And another denial. And as you can see, now there's quite a bit more of these in the in video 1 that we uploaded, in late January. So most denials are denied for the reason of, there's a failure on the part of the US Citizen Petitioner and the fiance to prove the existence of a bona fide relationship. And like I said, that's the catch-all denial. That's what they use as an excuse for everything. Then there's the approvals, which are just as crazy. Here's one that, they ask 4 questions. Do you know what a K-1 visa means? What does your fiance do? Have you been to the USA to visit him? You okay on a wedding in the USA instead of your native country? Okay, you're approved. So if you ask a psychologist, and we did, we asked plenty of psychologists to analyze this stuff, and they just say the same thing we do. This is crazy, just BS. It's just, there's no basis for this stuff, for this decision making in the field of psychology, and this is psychology. So, as you go through here, you'll just see the same thing. Here's one, they ask 3 questions in the middle. 3 questions and okay, you're approved. So these are all approvals. Pause the screen and read these. And here, approval. Gee, look, there's the terrorists again. So the terrorists were able to slip through the system, and that's because, they're older than 12 years old. It's pretty easy to figure out. So these guys, they went to their USCIS case was approved with no or little indicators. The guy found a lady who was, born within 300 some days of him. And the consular officer, the, barely, the entry level, barely trained consular officer was unable to look at this woman and tell that she's a terrorist because you ask 3 questions and you approve. There's no indicators. There's nothing to alarm them that this might be a non-bona fide couple. And he did. The woman didn't even know the guy. They never met. They lied about meeting. She lied about where she's from, what city she's from, and she just passed through the system with no issue at all. So here's the general consensus, the overwhelming consensus that people feel about the interview process, whether you were denied or approved. Naturally, more people were approved, but they still think it's crazy, that the case is predetermined before you get there. And of course, the government will argue, no, it's not. We have the whole of government system. Well, that's bullshit. All of it is bullshit. The indicators are bullshit. The interview is a joke. It's just crazy, crazy stuff going on here. So in summary, the INA places the importance of the face-to-face interview at U.S. consulates, but we all know that the interview is a joke. And if you have your own psychologist and you want to ask, if you are a psychologist, hey, join us. We want to know your opinion. We haven't found anybody yet that disagrees with us. So here's a new topic, the arrogance, incompetence, and corruption of the Department of Homeland Security and Department of State. And, when you first look at this, you'll think, who are these people? It's probably, we're a couple hundred people now. And you probably think we're a couple hundred people holed up in some kind of ranch, in rural America, and we've got 1,500 firearms and automatic weapons and, grenade launchers and stuff like that and 1 million rounds of ammo. We're just waiting for the government to show up so we can shoot them all. But that's not the case. What we are is, professionals. We're U.S. federal government consultants, and we're members of academia, PhDs in statistics and PhDs in psychology, and we're members of the press, and we're members of watchdog organizations. And we've got people on our side from the DHS and the USCIS and also ICE, on our side that take our viewpoint that this is just crazy. So we're going to briefly talk about arrogance here. So this is just an example of arrogance. We have some kind of letter on the left that was sent to some U.S. petitioner, and there's some Chinese writing on here, so it must have been from China. And on the right, you can see this that you can look up. This is basically a form letter that they send out. All consulates all over the world send the same thing. After the interview and a thorough review of your visa application, the consular officer, the entry-level consular officer, found that you are not eligible for the visa category in which you are applying. The Fiancé petition, Form I-129F, your petitioner filed on your behalf will be returned to the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. Once it has been returned, the Consulate General, this is the guy in the consulate, no longer has jurisdiction over this case. If you or your petitioner contacts the consulate, no specific information will be provided. Nothing specific like what the hell did we get denied for, or nor will additional documents be accepted. So in other words, we are demigods. You are not. We're denying your case. We're not telling you why, because if we tell you why, you might be able to argue with us. If we don't tell you why, you can't do squat. So this is one sign of arrogance. Incompetence, if you want to see other signs of arrogance, there's plenty in the other videos. So incompetence, we're just going to give you a couple examples of incompetence here. 1, hey, terrorists 1, U.S. government 0, 14 Americans dead. Another case of incompetence, this is a sham marriage thing that made the news a couple years ago. a Chinese father and daughter team who neither one of them had any training in law or a law degree. They decided to open up this law office in downtown LA in this building where there's all law offices, pretty high rent district here. And they decided they're going to become millionaires because what they're going to do is find Chinese people who want American citizenship, and they're going to hook them up with Americans who are willing to pay, or I'm sorry, that will take some money too. So what they arrange here is that usually, I haven't seen the stats, but all the pictures I've seen related to this, it's a US Citizen Petitioner guy who finds a fiancé visa or a fiancé in China that's willing to pay big bucks. But sometimes it's ladies too. And what the law office does, they're over 12 years old, so they know how to avoid indicators. So when they match up these couples, these couples don't know each other from squat. This is all sham marriages. They're just arranged, pay money, get US citizenship, come over here, start a family. So these people know that, we don't want to pair anybody up who has a big difference in, age or religion or language, nationality, no differences in anything means you're guaranteed to slide through the system. And you can slide through the interview because the interview is predetermined. Here's another example of incompetence. This is, ICE, our buddies from ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. So they arrested 1,437 individuals for human trafficking relating to 400 human trafficking victims. So these 400 people, did they get through the system? Yeah, because why? Because they're not legitimate couples in loving relationships who would have indicators like maybe a difference in age, a difference in religion, difference in language even sometimes. They're people who were matched up to slide through the system. If you're a criminal, you get through the system. Easy. No issue at all. And then there's, internal mistakes. Here's Department of Homeland Security audit that they audited themselves and found out that 858 immigrants likely granted citizenship in error. Like, whoops. That's a big number there. Then we have corruption. So what do we have here? We have a picture on the left of the INA Section 221G. So this is, like I said, this is the default reason why everybody's denied 221G. 221G actually means there's something probably missing in your case, and they need more evidence. So the policy here is after submitting documentation, your visa application can be processed to conclusion to determine whether or not you qualify for a visa. You have 1 year from the date you were refused. On the right, we have another letter from some consulate somewhere in the world. And what they say here is based on an interview and submitted evidence, the fiancé was found ineligible for fiancé visa under Section 221G. And what they're going to do, our office will return their visa petition to the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service for revocation. If the visa petition has expired by that time, then the USCIS will not reaffirm or reopen the case. So here's another tactic that's corrupt and criminal basically. When they refuse your case, they don't give you a reason why, and they also don't send it back to the USCIS. The USCIS, for people who have gone through this process, and there's a lot of charts, I've looked at a lot of dates in here, and it basically, from the time the USCIS approves a case and sends it to the visa processing center, it takes like maybe 3 or 4 days of processing at the processing center, maybe 4 days. And then they print the visa, and then they send it to the consulate. So you're talking less than 10 days altogether. And that includes the visa being created and documented and entered into records with both passports. So, when the consulate, denies a case, they can get it back to the USCIS in 5 days. How long does it take? Guess. It takes like 4 to 5 months. And the reason it takes 4 to 5 months is because the expiration date on the case is 4 months. That's the validity period when it's first approved is 4 months long. So this is another corrupt practice they have. They deny your visa. They don't bother to tell you why, because you might have some, you might have an argument if they tell you why. So they don't tell you why, and they don't give the case back to the USCIS so they can do anything about it. Okay, this is one example. The other videos and the both presentations, the 300-page one and a 600-page one have a lot of examples of this stuff. I only put one of each in here because we have to be brief. So this is the United States Department of Justice, who investigated some criminals in the USCIS, and they, they tried them and convicted them and put them in federal penitentiary. So this red and black theme that you see here, that you see, many examples of in video 1 probably, or maybe video 2. This is, just one example. USCIS is black and red. So the one on the left is former officer with the Federal Immigration Agency found guilty of accepting bribes. The one on the right, grand jury paid bribes to government officials. So these, both of these USCIS people were convicted of, accepting bribes, and, they're in a federal penitentiary. The yellow and black, and, there's only one of them here, but there's many in the other videos and presentation. This is ICE. So, we basically look at ICE guys as good guys. They clean up after all the other, organizations screw up by going out and finding these. They didn't find the terrorists. The reason they found the terrorists is they were shooting people. But, they found the sham marriages, and they found the victims of human trafficking. But, they're subject to being corrupt too. And here's, a couple of ICE people getting arrested and convicted and sent to prison. Then you have DHS, which is orange and black, and there's a bunch of pages of these in the other videos too. But this one here I just selected because this is a little bit humorous. This is the DHS OIG, the Office of Inspector General. So the Office of Inspector General is set up inside of the DHS to basically be a watchdog of their own organization, to look for, unneeded spending, and for fraud and for corruption. So here the head of the Inspector General office, got put in prison for 3 years. Crazy. Department of State, they do the same kind of corruption as everybody else, but they take it up a notch sometimes too. This is a person that's being arrested for espionage, crimes against the United States. This woman, you'll read a lot about her in 2018 because this is current stuff. It hasn't gone to trial yet. In Congress, it probably doesn't surprise anyone that, senators and representatives are also corrupt and get arrested and thrown in the slammer. This is a report that's put out by the Department of Justice every year, and this is for the fiscal year 2015. And on the right, you can see in 2015, they had 458 federal officials charged with a crime, 402 convicted, and 153 waiting trial. So, now do you believe us that the government's corrupt? The examples we show you are just, a drop in the bucket compared to how many federal people are, criminal. And this is, this is something that you have to watch the video a couple times to realize that these people here that raise their hand and swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, they didn't do that, because the truth would have been to tell the Senate committee, that we have no clue how to identify the target groups, none of them. They slip through the system really easy, and we can't stop them. So to make it look like we're doing something, and to make it look like the process is not automatic, we deny, 670, for the last year, fiancé visa cases just for the hell of it, because we have to deny some because, we sacrifice these people. And we don't bother telling them, why they were denied or if they have any recourse. That's the idea. So that would have been telling the truth, telling the Senate committee that they have no clue, because that's what is going on here. And then, this is another thing that I'm currently working on. Donahue has never audited the number of denied visa cases to see, let's take a year, for example. I just did an audit on 2015 down below. So he's never gone out and found, all of these visa cases that were denied, fiancé visa cases, and to see what's happening with these couples now. What you would find out is most of them, are married now. Maybe the US citizen moved to the other country. Maybe they, called a law firm. Maybe they submitted another I-129F. Maybe they got married and the US citizen brought his fiancé over here on a marriage visa. So, nobody's ever audited these people to see, what you've done to screw up these lives. But we have, because this is just something that irks us. Every minute they spend denying a legitimate couple is like a minute they should spend trying to find the target groups, like terrorists. So I did an audit of 2015 and found that the U.S. Department of State owes American couples $74 million just for that year alone. And that's based on, the couple, it's kind of modest figures per couple. They might spend, $15,000 on legal fees, maybe about the same amount of money on travel expenses, a few airline trips or more than that. Most parts of the world, you're looking at like a $700 round trip is the cheapest you can find. So if, this happened and it's been going on for a few years, you're looking at thousands of dollars in travel expenses, hotel expenses, and meal expenses. And then you're also looking at loss of income from a spouse. So I included that in there too. And what I come up with is a certain figure per people. And of the 500 people that were denied in 2014, I gave it a really modest estimate that 400 were denied in error, where couples were actually legitimate, where it's actually probably 480 out of 500. But at 400, we come up with $74 million. And we should take that out of the assets of these people that are on this leadership team, and we distribute it among the people whose lives they screwed up. So this is another thing here. This is just taking another look at what happens here. I have this white oval in the middle here that, in another video, the screen before this had the ILs and IHs, and now I just have IHs in there. But these are indicators, and if you read the thing on the lower left, IL is, low number of indicators or no indicators, and H means a high number of indicators. So what happens to the, people with low indicators? Most of them go on to be happily married couples, but there's also some of them that go on to be successful terrorists and they kill Americans. There's also some that go on to be successful, sham marriages. They got their US citizenship because they paid, 50, 80 grand for it. And there's people that are stuck in human trafficking, in some kind of sweatshop or a prostitution ring. That's not what they wanted, but that's where they are. So that's what happens to people with low indicators. And then the high indicators, they go to, a crapshoot called the interview. So here's another thing that's very, very corrupt that this, Deputy Secretary of State does. This blue square looking thing in the middle is U.S. Department of State and Department of Homeland Security, the whole of government approach, including the I-129F indicators and the consulate interview. Let's just call this the criteria. So this is the criteria that they use to identify target groups. Now, have they ever taken this criteria and bumped it up against a known population of terrorists or a known population of sham marriages or a known population of human trafficking people? Because they have those populations, they're known. Now, if this system cannot identify terrorists, sham marriages, and human trafficking and other types of visa fraud, why are they using it? If you can't identify, the real population that you want, the target population, then you shouldn't be using this, criteria, because the only thing you're doing is getting, people in loving relationships. But, we realize also that, that's kind of a sacrifice that they make so that they can keep more terrorists out of the country. Because when they deny real people, terrorists, might think that's not the best way to get in. So what we have coming through here, is a bunch of terrorists and, a bunch of people entering the country, mistakes by the DHS and human trafficking and sham marriages. And then we have, American citizens and American Citizen Petitioners and their fiancés who are afraid of the system. Well, why are they afraid of the system? They have plenty of reason to be afraid of the system because, there's a good chance they're going to get denied. Having a legitimate relationship means nothing to these people. It's the number of indicators you have and the mood of the consular officer. Some people with high indicators can be approved. But 2% are going to be rejected. So what we have here is this insane cycle on the right where you have the DHS and DOS are unable to identify target groups. So the indicator system only identifies legitimate couples. 2% of them get denied at the consulate. And then couples write, the people that are denied write letters to their senators, and the senators send form letters, and the form letters do nothing. So this is what we have on the left for this insane cycle to continue. We need the arrogance, incompetence, and corruption of the Department of Homeland Security and Department of State, and indifference from the senators. They don't care. They're the senators. Your senators are in Washington D.C. and your representatives. When you call your Senate office or write to them or send them an email, you're sending them an email in your state. So if you're a US Citizen Petitioner, you're sending an email to somebody who's an entry level, probably a part-time college intern. And what they do is they grab a form letter. They say, okay, visa denial. We have a form letter for that. So I'll send it to the consulate and we'll get a letter back from the consulate. And that's all they'll do because, the senators and representatives, they're all busy in Washington doing their, partisan game playing and trying to spread their name and, going to events and making allies in Congress and the Senate. And that's all they care about. So this is the result. We have too many people, too many target groups gain access to the United States. And that's just the way it looks, And this is a little bit different look here. I think I covered this we covered it in another video. I just forgot what the number is, I guess, video 2. So if you look at the graph on the top line there, there's a, I don't know what color you call that, blue, green, aqua looking color. So on that graph, the way the indicator system is done, the way it's, the way it works is you indicate people, you basically flag people at the fringes of this normal distribution curve. Like, for example, age difference. If you're going to say, let's say, you're a web developer and you're the person and you get in a meeting with a bunch of people and they're trying to set, what age difference are they going to set to be an indicator. So they might say, if there's a difference in age of 5 years, you might mark, a fourth, half of the population, because normal people don't care, they get married to people that aren't their own age, most people I know, there are the high school sweethearts that get married, but that's, not that common, and so if you set the indicator at 5 years, you might not, you mark too much of the population. So you might mark that and give it a weight of 1, Then you set the indicator at like 10 years, and now you've got like a third of the population, which is way too much, to mark. So maybe you'll give that weight a 2. And then you see if you move the age difference out to 15 years, then you're only capturing 2% of the population, which is, what you want, basically. And, you set the indicator there and you give that a weight of 10, so that's a major, major indicator. But, what they're doing is they're indicating people on the fringes of this normal distribution curve. I had I have an MBA, but it's been a while, so I had to have a university professor in statistics straighten me out on this because I forgot a few things. So anyways, the indicators, that they set up to get the terrorists pass through it really easy. The human trafficking people pass through it easy, and probably the easiest people to pass through are the sham marriages arranged by these crazy, not even law firms, but they're smart enough to match people up that have no indicators. So on the bottom, if you look at the same graph, you have the same thing with the purple circles, but the target population is in red. They avoid indicators. They're right. They're not at the, they're not at the extremes of this normal curve. So they call these standard deviations. So they're not at the extreme, the outer deviations. They're right in the middle. Their age difference is like, 0 to 3 years. They have the same religion, the same income, the same language they speak, the same education, the same everything. So as a result, you have these jihad, flag waving people getting into the country, and who doesn't get in the country? Some fiance. It's another way to look at it. This, this looks like a picture of, a room full of clergy. You have probably, I don't know, they're Catholic, and the guy in the middle with all the gold, he's, probably a, a bishop or something. Pardon me for not knowing what level he is, but anyways, these are all white guys in clergy, and they're, they could represent male fiancés for female American citizen petitioners. So what we see, the guy on the left, is wearing all black and sandals and a face mask, and he's, waving ISIS flag and carrying a AK-47. And, he looks kind of jihadi to me, but not to the government. The government sees this case and says, wow, this is a person with low indicators. Come on in, And then the people with high indicators, there are a couple of these guys, dressed in white, like a white and shining armor. They're the good guys, okay? But they have high indicators, so some of them are going to get denied. The jihadi looking guy, no problem. He comes in. So, that's the way it is right now. And, we could use some more help. We have a bunch of people. We have over 200 people now. We have a website. I'll publish that on the YouTube channel. But we could use some more people to, A, raise hell, and B, help us be contact persons. Like we have, there's one university that I work with. I work with the professors in the fields of psychology and statistics. But, we have several major universities that we're working with, and, I can't do all of them, so other people do a couple more. We have a lot of government watchdog organizations that nobody's doing. So we need more people, and we need the people that are watching these videos to start raising hell, because, the next terrorist attack is probably going to come. Hopefully it's not going to come at the Super Bowl. That's tomorrow. But it could come anytime, anywhere from terrorists that get into the country the fast and easy way through a fiancé visa. And in order to change that, we need more people to raise hell. Raising hell means write to your senators and say, hey, look at this video up on YouTube. This is what these people who, claim to be experts, and we are, this is what they say is happening. We're putting this country at a huge security risk because the government, they're either just, totally corrupt criminal types, or they don't have the competence to do something about this. They should get better consultants if that's the case. So, write to your senator, and there's a video that shows how to write to your senator. You don't want to write to somebody in your state. You want to at least go to your senator's chief of staff or somebody high up like that. Don't bother with the people that, write form letters that work in your local offices. So we need people to raise hell. We need to spread awareness. We need this video to be spread all over the web. Use your Facebook or Twitter pages to, link this video so more people become aware of this. And the more people that become aware of this, the more likely it is that we won't have another domestic terrorist attack where Americans die because somebody eventually is going to start doing something about it. Okay, so I went, over my time by 12 minutes. So sorry about that, and I appreciate your time and attention, and, do whatever you can to help us. Join us or just, raise Hades. Thank you.